Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, IAC. So, distinguished guests, dear delegates, dear friends and colleagues, as President of the IAF, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our traditional IAF ID 3G Diversity Breakfast dedicated to the promotion of diversity in the space sector. As you already know, the 3G, standing for Generation, Gender, Geography, are the pillar of the IAF Diversity Initiative, which have made one of the focal points in my IAF Global Innovation Agenda 2016-2019. With the aim of fostering and advancing the 3G diversity principles amongst a global space community, the IAF has established an international platform for diversity and equality in astronautics, in short, IDEA. This platform provides a framework for an intensive and open exchange on diversity and equality aspects within the IAF and amongst IAF member organizations, as well as potential IAF members and other organizations promoting diversity. We have already seen many outstanding diversity events with remarkable resonance in the space community. Over the past 3 years, we have organized 20 ID3G diversity events at IACs, spring meetings, global conferences, and other events. And I am very happy to say that the participation of students and young professionals below 35 years of age is strongly increasing, and also the percentage of female delegates and speakers at IAF events has been steadily growing over the past 3 years. For what concerns geographical reach, I gladly report that at this year's IAC 2019, we have more than 80 represented countries. We have a total of 69 countries in the IAF, but 80 represented countries here this year. And in the past years, this ID3G Diversity Breakfast will provide the opportunity for several important actors in space to showcase splendid examples of their commitment to a diverse working environment. First of all, my friend Larry James, Deputy Director of JPL, will talk about the commitment JPL has always placed on diversity and will share a very exciting video with us. Furthermore, 3 female engineers and scientists currently in their degree program or very recently graduated will engage in a panel discussion and will discuss the important steps to be taken to improve the diversity of the engineering workforce. I would like finally to thank very much our sponsor for this IAF ID 3G Diversity Breakfast, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, for their strong support. I want also to give a big thanks for my Borough colleague, Special Advisor to the IAF President for Diversity, Mrs. Mary Snitch, and my team of the IAF Secretariat for putting together such a comprehensive program, and a special thanks to all our inspiring speakers here today. Once again, welcome, enjoy the presentations, discussion, and the networking. And now I have the pleasure and the honor to give the floor to Mary Snitch. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Le Gall. It is such a pleasure to welcome you and see all of you here today for this, actually the third diversity breakfast, having this agenda presented and implemented by Dr. Le Gall when he became the president of the IAF in 2016. This activity, this agenda initiative has only blossomed and grown in its relevance and its impact over the last 3 years. And in fact, what I am seeing as I work with organizations around the world, many other organizations are working to mirror what the IAF is doing in 3G diversity. So it is extremely exciting. We have a wonderful program today, and I'm personally very appreciative. We are all very appreciative to JPL for serving as the sponsor today. JPL is actually my alma mater. I was at JPL from 1985 to 1990, and so it's wonderful to stay in touch with friends and the leaders from the lab. And we very much thank you for being here. And a special thanks, Larry, to you and your team for sponsoring this very important breakfast. I'll turn the podium over to Dr. James to introduce our panel today and the JPL program, a wonderful video. I want to make a special thanks to our three panelists today who, of course, epitomize 3G diversity. Ricky and Rachael and Rosemary are just astounding young women who have already achieved so much in their very early careers. And this is going to be a great event, and I thank you so much for being here. Larry, I believe, turn the mic over to you.
Good morning. There we go. Well, again, thank you all for being here. As I was walking over here at 7 a.m. in the morning after a late Nationals game, I wasn't sure how many would show up, but obviously you did. And so thank you for that. The sun is rising. The Nationals won. You get to be at a wonderful breakfast. What could be better? You know, diversity and inclusion is an extremely important thing at JPL, and we were really honored to sponsor this breakfast because I think it speaks to the ethos and the values of who we are. And so the opportunity to talk about that today with this large crowd, to really the highlight, to honor and to discuss diversity and inclusion with our three panel members, and to share all that with you, I think is a great way to start our day here at the IAC. To begin with, I'm going to show a short video. I thought, well, you know, it's breakfast, it's early. Rather than hear us talk up here, let's get started with a little video. I will caveat that a bit. This really is an internal JPL video, so it talks a lot about JPL. I apologize for that. But I think it's important because it shows a bit of the culture and who we are and how we value everyone there in terms of their capabilities, their ideas, how we seek the best ideas across the spectrum of everyone that works at JPL to ultimately do the missions that NASA assigns us to do. And by the way, this is NASA Blue Shirt Day, so if you see a bunch of guys running around with their NASA shirts on, that's why we're doing that. Administrator Bridenstine asked us to do that today. So again, the video is I hope you get a sense of the importance we place on the people that are there and valuing every single person to come up with these incredible ideas and develop these incredible missions. I'll also say in the video, we don't talk about our partners. Frankly, as I said, it's an internal video, but we recognize that we are hugely dependent on our partners across both the international community, the industrial community, the academic community, to enable us to do the missions that we do. So again, just a few caveats because this, you'll think, wow, this is all about JPL. Well, it is, but it's for the folks that are in JPL. So with that, I'd like to run the video, and then I'll talk a little bit about JPL and how we promote inclusion and diversity, and then we'll get to our panel members and hear from the folks that are living it out every day today. So if we could run the video right now, that would be great. Actually, I have to run the video, sorry.
What does JPL do?
It's the most unique place to work on Earth.
Our charter is to do things no one has done before.
We do what no one else even dares to dream about.
Imagination and innovation are crucial in being able to do the kind of work that we do.
Innovation comes from people, but it also, I think, comes from structure and from the environment. If you can provide people with the appropriate tools, the appropriate workspace, the appropriate environments, you're also going to get a higher innovation output.
One of the things that makes the JPL environment so special to work in is that even when you first walk on lab, it feels like a campus.
And you walk around, you hear people talking about their work.
What would be the best way to get a subsurface vehicle beneath the ice of Europa? And you're thinking, those people aren't just talking about it because they saw it on a movie somewhere. It's because they're really trying to figure out how to do it.
JPL is an incredibly diverse place.
There's thousands of people here with big brains.
Planetary science, answering these big questions, you need chemists, physicists, astrophysicists, biologists, and then you need everyone on the engineering side to actually build the things that you need to answer the questions.
People know so much about so many different things that if I'm looking for an expert in a particular field, engineering or science related, I could probably find them at JPL. I don't have to pick up the phone, I just have to walk down the hallway.
Science is all about asking questions, and engineering is all about finding solutions. And so it makes sense to marry these two things together and try and answer the biggest, toughest, most difficult questions we can come up with.
What does JPL do? JPL builds the tools for exploring space.
The boldness of my colleagues is inspirational. The scope of the questions that they want to answer and the courage with which they go about tackling these big questions.
The passion of the people, the drive, the enthusiasm, and just the intelligence, the intellect that people throw every day at every problem that comes across.
Given a very challenging problem, please do this thing that's never been done before, that we don't know what to expect, that there's a huge uncertainty involved with. Most people would be terrified by that problem. I think those are the problems that we salivate over.
We shouldn't do something because it's safe and easy. We shouldn't do the thing that everybody knows how to do. We should push the boundary, and even if that means we might fail, we might succeed too.
I've never met anybody here that says, well, it's too hard. We all sit down and we just start crunching the numbers and figuring out how to get it done.
It's a journey. It's not necessarily an end destination. It's the whole way in which you're getting there.
It's a very liberating kind of environment to be in because you don't have to be so afraid of mistakes.
To recognize that we're doing science inside the solar system, outside the solar system, science focused back on Earth.
Our missions have a goal of helping humans understand more about the universe, and I think that's pretty amazing.
JPL has enormous respect for a good idea, and if you have a good idea, this is the place to bring it to fruition.
JPL is a special place because it allows people to have careers that are only limited by their imagination.
Well, there certainly is this drive, I think, from the human race to go explore, and not everybody is involved directly with that effort. As the years go by when you're at JPL, it becomes very clear that it truly is a privilege to be here.
This lab is leaving a legacy for not just the country, but for the world. And someday, if we ever do find that exoplanet that has life on it, or encounter some other solar system outside of ours, this is a place that's going to do that.
Well, as I said, that is JPL-centric, but I think the important comment that is in that video that I always resonate with is you can have a career here that's only limited by your imagination. And I think for all of us in this room, that's important because we want to ensure that whatever talents you bring to the position you're working in, you're only limited by your imagination, by what you want to do. And so I hope that gives you a sense of the culture that's important that be developed across our industry in terms of ensuring that as people walk in the door, they say, I can be what I want to be here. And that's what we want to ensure. Recently, my HR folks told us that we are now over 50% millennials and Gen X at JPL. So that is quite the change. I mean, I had nothing to do with that. But, you know, we talk about the baby boomers and all those sorts of things, but now Gen X and millennials are the majority of the population at JPL. I like to highlight in terms of our gender diversity. We just moved our Chief of Engineering, Jan Chodas, which is the largest organization at JPL, to be the project manager for our Europa Clipper mission. This is the largest spacecraft that JPL has ever built, to go out to that moon of Jupiter called Europa, about a $4 billion mission, and Jan is leading the charge to take us there, launching in 2023. So just a great example of the talent and the diversity that exists at JPL. Within JPL, you know, we don't put out quotas, we don't do those sorts of things, but it's encouraging to me that we focus on diversity, we focus on inclusion. In fact, about 80% of our managers have taken diversity and inclusion courses, even though it's not mandatory. But they understand that we all have things we have to learn, we all have things that we have to understand about ourselves in order to make sure that we give opportunity to everyone in the organization so that ultimately we come up with the best ideas using everyone's talents to accomplish those type of missions. So that's the type of environment I think we all have to strive to create in our organizations to ensure that, again, every person that walks in that door feels like I'm only limited by my imagination and I can do whatever I need to do to support this organization and make these missions happen. So with that as a brief background, I would like to just ask our panelists to come up. We're going to set up here on the platform, and I'll give a brief introduction to them, and then they'll talk a little bit about the journey that they have been on as they have moved into the aerospace world. Some who are in the process of coming into the aerospace world and some who are already there. So let's come on up and we'll get started with the panel. So they'll take a seat, and I'll give a brief introduction. Rukmini Roy is an aerospace engineering at Georgia Institute of Technology, originally from Singapore. So we're extremely excited to have her on the panel. Let's see, we also have Rosemary Davidson, who is a graduate student at MIT. She's in course 16 there. That's also the course that I was in at MIT, so great to have a fellow MIT student here. And then finally, Rachael McKee, who has graduated and now works for Lockheed Martin in business development. So with that, I'd like to just start and really have them tell you a little bit about themselves and also what led them to come into the aerospace world. So are we going to start? You got the mic, or? Okay, we'll start with Rosemary since you're holding the mic.
Sure. So my name is Rosemary Davidson. I'm a graduate student at MIT, and I completed my undergraduate in aerospace engineering at the University of Maryland, so just down the road. At the University of Maryland and at MIT, I've been very involved with the women in aeronautics and astronautics groups, both for undergraduate and graduate, and I've also been helping to develop a new subcommittee within AIAA called the Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics, which is kind of this network of university women in aero groups, and we're hoping to start a network of professional women in aero-astro groups as well. I guess I started getting involved in aerospace. I grew up right around this area, and so it was just a wealth of aerospace engineers that I knew at NASA Goddard and at the Applied Physics Lab. I grew up right near there. And so I would say probably from the time I was in first grade, I can remember engineers coming to talk to my class from NASA, and probably every career day. And so I would say that was the biggest factor in getting me interested in space. And then I had a family friend, and she was quite a mentor to me, and so I shadowed her at NASA Goddard when I was in high school, and that's why I decided to go into aerospace engineering, and I'm very happy I did.
Rachael.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. What an honor it is to be here. Rachael McKee. I graduated recently from Metropolitan State University of Denver with an aviation and aerospace science degree. So not traditionally an aerospace engineering degree, of course, but that didn't change my focus at all for being within the aerospace industry. I originally wanted to be an air traffic controller, and as soon as I took my first class, I absolutely hated it. I thought it was hard, not easy, but it was very tedious, to be honest. But after that, I told my father and was like, I need to change my degree, and he was very disappointed because he was very excited that I was going to be an air traffic controller. But then I said, no, I want to do aviation and aerospace science, and he said, okay, fine. So from then on, I got involved with Students for Exploration and Development of Space. I got involved with the national level, and then it was an honor to become a Brooke Owens Fellow for Aviation and Aerospace Women in undergraduate degrees. And from then on, I became really good friends with a guy named Rob Chambers, and he hired me pretty fresh out of university, and I'm thankful to this day.
Okay. Ricky.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ricky. I go to Georgia Tech, and I'm from Singapore. And that means that in 2016, I started going to the Georgia Institute of Technology as an international student. My background is as a third culture kid. So I grew up in Thailand and Malaysia, and then finished up my schooling in Singapore. And what that means is that I learned the difference of fitting in and belonging very early on. When I finished my schooling in Singapore, I had the privilege of attending the United World College of Southeast Asia, which had this emphasis on empathy and kindness. And we had a lot of workshops by UN officials teaching us things like peace-building theory, and having the opportunity to go in to countries like Timor-Leste after training for years and hosting conferences with youth from areas of conflict zones, and working with NGOs and building student organizations to fund large community projects. And taking that into university with me has been very interesting, because having interacted with individuals from around 76 countries, really growing up, and then coming in to another country and interacting with a homogenous group of people, Americans, has been very, very interesting. And then navigating that as an aerospace engineering student, where literal doors are closed off to me due to ISTAR restrictions, has been even harder. And I'm very grateful to be on this panel here today. But getting here has required me to navigate a lot of environments that weren't particularly conducive to my success, find allies, and also remain really compassionate to individuals that didn't make it any easier. But I really got into aerospace engineering when the Malaysian Airlines plane went missing, and the utopian bubble that is Singapore, the bubble felt like it had been popped, because something bad had suddenly just happened. And I distinctly remember feeling as though a parent or a friend could have easily been on that plane. In the United States, we travel to different states for vacations. In Southeast Asia, we hop to different countries, and having that fear is what made me turn that into this inspiration to prevent planes from going missing. And I've had the privilege of being a Brooke Owens Fellow now with Rachael, and being on the Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics board with Rosemary, but here representing the AIAA Diversity Scholars. So thank you to everyone that really made that possible for me.
Well, great. Thanks, Nikki. So while you have the mic, you kind of touched on this, but maybe just some of the things you've had to navigate, or maybe obstacles you've had to overcome to kind of move down this path of aerospace. Could you speak into that a little bit more?
Of course. So the thing that I really wanted to talk about today was how diversity and inclusion is really two problems. We talk about them together, using them as this quick phrase. Sometimes it's filling quotas. Other times it's doing a really great job of ensuring that our views are represented. But those things are really two problems. So we're doing a lot of incredible things to ensure that the word gets out, that women in STEM is a concept, and that's awesome. But what happens when we get to these engineering classes and these engineering teams and we attend conferences? What happens when the women are there, but the environments aren't as inclusive? And what happens when we have a seat at the table, but we aren't allowed to speak as often, or to lead, or to really thrive? And so I can't really change the perspective of every other person on the table, but I really feel as though some of the organizations I'm on and we're on can help address ways in which we present ourselves to ensure we have the tools to be able to figure out how to speak more, or to lead, or to thrive.
Okay, and just a comment, and I'll ask Rosemary to speak into that as well. But the studies have shown, and this is just data, it's not pejorative, but it's data that often when there is a promotion available within a company, men are more likely to apply than women. And that's just what the data shows. And so certainly we have examined that data at JPL, and we're working very hard to ensure that when there are positions of management or leadership that are open, how do we ensure that we get a diverse pool of applicants for those positions? And in fact, encouraging our managers to encourage those below them who may not think they are ready to ensure that they apply. So that's something that I think we all can think about, because we need to encourage those who, especially women in the workforce, sometimes they feel like I'm not quite ready yet. And again, that's just data that has been validated, that we need to encourage them to go ahead and apply for those positions so they can be considered for those positions of leadership and management within the company. So, and Rosemary, perhaps you can speak into some of these issues as well?
Sure, definitely. So I think one of the biggest obstacles for me, I talked about how I had an incredible support system, already going into college. So in that sense, it wasn't quite as hard for me to go into engineering as it was for Ricky. But when I got into my aerospace engineering, 100, so Introduction to Aero Engineering course, there were about 110 students in the class, and I was one of 8 women in that class. And then the second semester, when we were forming the Women in Aeronautics and Astronautics group at the University of Maryland, that number had dropped to 6. And there had, in that same time, even more men had come into the major. And so I think just one of the biggest obstacles is looking into, a sea and seeing no one that looks like you. And one of the biggest things that we have to do is focus on K through 12 outreach as well. I think everyone in this room agrees that diversity is incredibly important, and a lot of people in this room also serve as mentors and inspiration to a lot of university students and young professionals. But I think one of the biggest factors in me going into engineering was having a mentor at the high school level. And so starting that mentorship earlier, it's much harder because K through 12 students don't really know how to be good mentees. It's kind of more on the responsibility of the mentors to reach out and try to, foster that connection. But there's even data showing that, girls at age 5 are just as interested in math as boys. And at age 6, something happens and they drop off. And so why is that, and how can we focus on that, those big groups like age 5 to 6, and then middle school, and then throughout high school? And I think another important thing, maybe talking to Dr. James' point about women don't apply for, jobs as often, and promotions as often, and they'll look through the list of requirements and decide that they don't meet all of them. We should also maybe stop focusing on saying if you like math and engineering in high school, you should go into, or math and science, you should go into engineering. Because I think it's not necessarily as important. If you like engineering and you like helping people, you'll probably be a good engineer. And the math and the science will come, you'll usually get the math and science you need in college. So if students don't like maybe science, but they really like math in high school, we don't want to discourage them from going into engineering by saying it's something if you like math and science.
And Rosemary, again, I think made a great point about mentoring. Certainly, as you said, having that mentor in high school is not always easy, but it's extremely important, even in the earlier years. But also, I think in our communities, in our companies, it's important that we have formal mentorship programs. We have something called the Technical Women's Leadership Journey at JPL that we've put together, where it's really a long-standing process of making sure that we have mentors and we mentor our women in JPL so that they have this group of people around them to help them move forward within the organization. So that's just an extremely important point. Okay, Rachael.
Well, I guess to wrap it up in kind of a nice little bow with this question is, it stinks being the only girl in the class of all men. With that being said, I would say the only obstacle that I ever really, well, there's two obstacles that I've faced. First obstacle is being completely blind to it, because it's just always been the norm. So not knowing, that there should be more women and that I should be supporting more women in this field has been an obstacle. And seeing all of my friends say the same things about, well, it stinks not being the only person. Until I was actually in the Brooke Owens Fellowship, I didn't really understand that was as much of an issue as it is. Because again, it was just normal for everyone. It was normal for me to walk into a classroom of all men and be one of the boys just as much. So encouraging more women to go into the aerospace industry or going into the aviation industry is unbelievably important to make the environment seem like it's not just me there.
Okay, I think what I'd like to, one final question perhaps, certainly the two of you that are in school, and Rachael, you're already in the workforce. If you looked out 5 years, what would be the one or two most important things you see your company, future company or current company, doing to ensure that we have a diverse workforce and we have a supportive workforce that provides the right opportunities? Or are there a couple of things that you say, we really need to be able to do this as we look to the future?
Oh gosh. So I think in 5 years is enough to make quite a big of difference with very specific age groups. So in 5 years we aren't going to see the impact of reaching out to kindergartners now, right? But I would say in 5 years, companies can make huge strides in implementing maybe the mentorship programs like JPL has, and maybe implementing formal outreach programs and trying to coordinate those, as well as trying to foster, international collaboration. And I think some of the biggest, things in 5 years that companies need to do is one, definitely have the mentorship and a focus on increasing diversity. I think that should be something now, but hopefully in 5 years they can start seeing, real impacts from that. But then also making sure that there is a mechanism for international students and maybe students from all different backgrounds, from much more underrepresented and much more impoverished backgrounds, to be able to succeed in the field. It's very hard because I think a lot of people come from get a seat at the table, but they kind of already were in a pool that we're looking to. And so how do we reach out to those communities that currently don't have a seat at the table and make sure that they are welcomed and encouraged and we help them succeed? And I think that's something that employers can really help develop in 5 years.
Rachael.
Thank you. So I'm going to shamelessly plug the IAF and the Brooke Owens Fellowship, and of course Lockheed Martin. The IAF, just looking out in this audience, how many women are in the audience? Can you just raise your hand? A lot. That is amazing. Sorry, because I've never seen that many women at a conference before, to be honest. And women of color, of course, too. The Brooke Owens Fellowship is striving every year to become more diverse and feel more inclusive and feel like we belong there, and we should be in the industry, and we should be, breaking down walls and barriers to get what we want. And working for Lockheed Martin has been a true blessing because I see the gender diversity every day. I work with so many women. I was in a meeting of quite a few senior leaders and executives, and we outranked all of the men. It was awesome. There was about 7 people in the room, and 6 of them were women that were leaders. I see the geographical difference from everyone. One of my managers is Puerto Rican. One of my other friends is from Venezuela. Another friend of mine is from Germany. I mean, they're everywhere, and it's wonderful to see that that's still a thing. That I'm not the only, American to sit there. That there's many other people there. Besides that, I would say about 40% of Lockheed Martin is actually millennials, and that's really cool because I have a lot of friends. Of course I have friends that are older, but I have a lot of really good friends that are also the same age that we go out and have a lot of fun with. So I think in 5 years, we'll be okay, to be honest.
Great, thank you. So Ricky, if you could wrap it up.
Yeah, in 5 years in these different organizations, I'd love to see human resources teams just have heads of people and belonging, where we just run more workshops on how to be allies for each other. So looking out for each other rather than simply having a conversation about just the minority groups, because they aren't minority groups anymore. That's what I would like to see.
Okay, well again, let's give our panel members a round of applause for sharing their thoughts. Oh, and thank you all for getting up at 7 a.m. It's amazing that you're all here. It shows the intense interest in making sure that we do this well as we move into the future. And as I said, and they said, the future is bright if we put our shoulder to the wheel and make sure that we all focus on this and move forward. So thank you for attending. There is some JPL swag at the table if you want some up here, and have a great day at the IAC. Thank you. He's going to wrap up.
What an absolutely fantastic panel this was. In fact, my friend from Thalassalinia came over during the panel and said, "This is the best panel that we have ever seen." And so I would say to our panelists, yes. I would say to our panelists that you might be expecting invitations to take your panel on the road, and we will hope to see you again. I have had the opportunity of starting to get to know each of our panelists, and they really are amazing and have achieved such great things. And particularly in relation to this IAC, they have been truly instrumental, each of them, in preparing their organizations to be represented here at the IAC. So we've got another half an hour or so just to talk amongst yourselves and to ask any questions that you might have. But I want to thank you again. Did Pascal leave? Yes, okay. The IAF incoming president, Dr. Pascal Uhrenfreund, is, of course, extremely committed to 3G diversity and has stated many, many times that she is fully committed to carrying on this great initiative that was founded by Dr. Le Gall. I thank you again for being here. It's wonderful to see this many people in the room at this hour, and have a great remainder of the day.